In this video, we will explore a complex case, often compared to the famous staircase case of author Michael Peterson in the United States. The story takes place in Tokyo, where behind the vibrant cityscape, there are still quiet neighborhoods that carry the marks of the past. Bunkyo, a peaceful district, stands apart from the hustle and bustle of the city and is home to a happy family. Their two-story house is the cozy abode of Park Jong-hyun and his four beloved children. Park Jong-hyun, a manga editor, works for Kodansha, one of the largest publishers in Japan. Kodansha is renowned for magazines like Morning Weekly and Shonen Magazine, popular among young people. Park Jong-hyun has created best-selling manga such as Gokudo Senshi and Nanatsu no Taizai, and has made significant contributions to editing famous works like Shingeki no Kyojin and Sei no Katachi. Thanks to his dedication, he has become a well-known figure in the industry. Recently, Park was appointed deputy editor-in-chief of Morinaga magazine, marking a major milestone in his career, though this new role also brought greater responsibilities and a more demanding work schedule. He often worked until morning before returning home. That day should have been just another busy work night, but when Park received a series of sad messages from his wife, he became worried. He called her and sensed her unstable mood. As a result, he ended his work early and rushed home. At 1 a.m., when he opened the door, he found his wife sitting alone in the living room, waiting for him. What happened next would completely alter the course of their family's life. At 2:45 a.m. on August 9, 2016, the urgent ring of a phone shattered the quiet of Bunkyo, Tokyo. With a trembling voice, Park Jong-hyun reported to the dispatch center that his wife had accidentally fallen down the stairs and was now lying motionless on the floor. Soon after, an ambulance arrived at the scene. Emergency responders found Park's wife, Haruna Kanako, lying motionless near the entrance to the house. She showed no signs of life and was confirmed dead. The police immediately began investigating, as Kanako's death appeared to be from causes other than natural ones. Kanako, 38 years old, 3 years younger than her husband, was originally from Gunma Prefecture. She lost her mother at a young age and was raised by her adoptive father. She was a bright student and earned admission to a university in Tokyo, where she met Park Jong-hyun through mutual friends. After 7 years of dating, they married. After their marriage, Kanako gave up her career to care for their 4 children, the youngest of whom was only 10 months old. The Park family lived in a 2-story independent house. The first floor included their master bedroom, a spacious living room, and a bathroom. Their youngest son shared the bedroom with his parents. The second floor was dedicated to the 3 older children, connected to the floor below by a staircase near the entrance. When questioned by the police, Park Jong-hyun stated that early that morning, his wife accidentally fell down the stairs and was lying near the entrance. However, during the investigation of the crime scene, the police found several details that contradicted his statement. The autopsy report revealed that under Kanako's fingernails, there were multiple skin cells from Park, while his arm also showed clear scratch marks, suggesting a physical altercation between the two. Additionally, Kanako had 2 injuries on the left side of her forehead, one a V-shaped wound about 1.18 inches long and the other approximately 0.79 inches long. The autopsy results indicated that the cause of death was asphyxiation due to pressure on her neck, with the time of death estimated to be between 1:30 a.m. and 2:30 a.m. As the police were preparing to further investigate Park, something unexpected happened the next day. Park Jong-hyun voluntarily went to the police station, completely changed his testimony, and provided a new version of events. He stated that, in fact, his wife had committed suicide. The reason he initially lied was because their children were still young and present in the house. He feared that the painful truth would deeply affect them, so he chose to lie to protect their mental well-being. According to Park's new testimony, on the day of the incident, Kanako felt both physically and emotionally exhausted from taking care of their 4 children alone. She had sent him over 10 messages expressing her despair, such as, "I keep crying, I can't stop," as if she were on the brink of collapse. Park became very worried, quickly finished his work, and rushed home. When he arrived home after 1 a.m., the children were asleep, and Kanako was alone in the living room. When Park entered, he found his wife in a state of panic, with her head bowed, muttering something, holding a knife in her hand. Kanako slowly looked up at Park with a cold gaze and, in a trembling voice, said, "Either you live, or I do. You choose." Immediately after, she lunged at him, and the two began to struggle, neither gaining the upper hand. Suddenly, Kanako stopped, stepped back, and looked at Park with a vacant and desperate expression. She said she wanted to leave this world with their children. Before Park could fully comprehend the situation, Kanako grabbed the knife and walked directly to the master bedroom, where their youngest son was sleeping soundly. Without hesitation, Park quickly ran to the bedroom, pinned Kanako to the bed, and tried to stop her. He struggled to subdue his wife and prevent her from carrying out her irrational actions. After a brief struggle, Kanako finally stopped resisting. Park, refusing to let his guard down, quickly picked up his son, who was still peacefully asleep, and rushed upstairs to the room of the other children. After locking the door, he heard Kanako's footsteps coming up the stairs. She began to twist the doorknob of the children's room and fiercely struck the door with the knife. Park used all his strength to hold the door, preventing his wife from breaking in. After a while, Kanako stopped. Park didn't dare open the door right away. He stayed in position, only hearing the prolonged silence. After several minutes, he suddenly heard a dull sound from outside, and then everything became quiet again. Carefully laying his son down, Park gently opened the door. As he stepped out, the sight at the bottom of the stairs left him stunned. Kanako was sitting at the foot of the stairs. A coat was tied to the banister. Park stood frozen, his mind blank, and rushed down to remove the coat. He then discovered that his wife had stopped breathing. The earlier noise had also woken the children upstairs. They rubbed their sleepy eyes and ran downstairs, asking anxiously what had happened. Looking into the bewildered eyes of his children, Park tried to suppress his own pain and choked out that their mother had accidentally fallen down the stairs and needed to go to the hospital for treatment. Not wanting to hurt the children, he called an ambulance in front of them, deciding to tell a white lie to protect their emotions. What hurt Park the most was that the coat, which had taken his wife's life, was the birthday gift Kanako had given him. After hearing Park's testimony, the police continued their investigation and discovered several suspicious details. On the coat, the key piece of evidence, they found no DNA from Kanako. To make matters more unclear, the police also found no fabric fibers on the stair banister matching the material of the coat. If Park's story were true, the coat should have had skin cells and fibers on the banister. Facing these suspicions, Park explained that after the children woke up, they may have accidentally touched the banister, wiping away the traces. As for why there was no DNA from his wife on the coat, he could not provide a satisfactory explanation. The increasing number of doubts caused the police's suspicions to focus more intensely on Park Jong-hyun. Could he really be telling the truth? Park Jong-hyun, 41 years old, is a Korean expatriate living in Japan. He was born in Osaka to a well-off family, with his parents being successful entrepreneurs in the hotel, restaurant, and billiard hall businesses. However, when he was young, his father tragically passed away, leaving Park with greater responsibility for his family. As the eldest son, he worked even harder in his studies. Although he didn't succeed in his first university entrance exam, after a year of retaking it, Park was accepted into Kyoto University, one of Japan's top universities, majoring in law. Kyoto University is known as the birthplace of many Nobel laureates, having trained 19 Nobel Prize winners. The university's law faculty, along with that of the University of Tokyo, is considered one of the pillars of legal education in Japan, with rich academic resources. Park Jong-hyun was a diligent student. However, after graduating, he did not pursue a career as a lawyer, instead turning to a career in manga editing. In 1999, he joined Kodansha, one of Japan's largest publishers, and began his creative career as a manga editor. Kodansha, where Park worked, is headquartered in Bunkyo, Tokyo. To make commuting easier, he decided to buy a house just about 1.86 miles from the company. After working there for a year, at the age of 25, Park met Kanako through an introduction from a mutual acquaintance. After 7 years of dating, they married and built a happy family with 4 wonderful children, 2 boys and 2 girls. In the eyes of their colleagues, Park and his wife were an ideal couple, always showing affection and never having any arguments. Park was known as the perfect husband. He once asked for time off from work to take care of the children, becoming the first male employee at Kodansha to take paternity leave. He shared the joy of becoming a father for the first time on social media, with posts that expressed his happiness and pride. However, this perfect family life began to change a year before the incident occurred. In June 2013, Park was promoted to deputy editor-in-chief of Morinaga magazine. With increased responsibilities, he had to dedicate more time to work and often worked late into the night, returning home only in the early morning. 6 months later, their youngest son was born, placing almost all of the responsibility for taking care of their 4 children on Kanako's shoulders. The incident occurred during the summer break, when the children were all home and at an active, energetic age. Having to take care of them alone left Kanako feeling physically and mentally exhausted. She frequently confided in Park about her stress and sadness. According to Park, his wife's deteriorating mental state led to the tragedy that happened that day. The police investigation continued, and they conducted a thorough search of the house. During this process, new evidence was discovered, but it only made the case more ambiguous and harder to understand. Investigators found traces on the mattress in the master bedroom on the first floor, related to incontinence, which is often a physiological response when the body is suffocated. In front of the mattress, they also found a mixture of blood and saliva. Forensic experts suggested that these traces could be linked to a physiological reaction during suffocation, which might have occurred in the final stages of Kanako's life. This led to a chilling conclusion. Kanako may have suffocated in the bedroom. However, Park maintained that his wife went upstairs and died at the foot of the stairs, but there were no traces found at that location. Experts offered differing opinions on this matter. Some argued that the traces on the mattress couldn't be explained by a single reason. Loss of consciousness due to pressure on the neck could cause incontinence, but it didn't necessarily have to occur when a person was near death. Additionally, the police also discovered blood in Kanako's nasal cavity, so the mixture on the mattress could likely be nasal blood mixed with saliva. Nosebleeds can happen for many reasons and aren't necessarily linked to life-threatening pressure on the neck. According to the defense experts, they argue that Kanako only temporarily lost consciousness on the mattress in the master bedroom on the first floor, but did not die immediately. After regaining consciousness, she went upstairs to find Park and struck the children's room door with a knife. In her state of desperation, she decided to end her life. In addition to the traces on the mattress, the V-shaped wound on Kanako's left forehead became a key point of controversy. The autopsy report showed that it was a blunt force injury, and a very small amount of blood was found on Kanako's clothes, suspected to be from this wound. This suggests that when the wound occurred, her blood circulation was weakened, and the injury might have occurred shortly before her heart completely stopped beating. At the scene, police found 15 small blood stains, possibly from the wound on Kanako's forehead, scattered in various places, 2 in the bedroom, 3 in the bathroom, and 10 near the stairs. Park claimed that the V-shaped wound on Kanako's forehead happened when the 2 of them were wrestling in the bedroom. However, the police disagreed with this statement. They argued that if the wound happened while Kanako was still alive, there would have been significant bleeding, and without any means to stop the bleeding, it would not have stopped on its own. However, only a small amount of blood was found at the scene, which contradicted Park's account. An even more confusing point is that if Park said Kanako was injured in the bedroom, but was still active when she moved upstairs, the forehead wound would certainly have left traces on the stairs. However, this did not happen. The police believe that Kanako's forehead injury may have occurred in the later stages of her life, when her blood circulation had severely weakened, resulting in only a small amount of blood being released. Based on the distribution of the bloodstains at the scene, the police speculated that the body might have been moved, leaving small bloodstains on the stairs. This aligns with the theory that the incident could have been staged as an accidental fall. Of the 10 bloodstains found near the stairs, most were concentrated at the foot of the stairs near the entrance and at Kanako's final position. Additionally, the police found a towel and a pair of gloves nearby, suspected of having been used to wipe away the bloodstains. This led them to propose a bold theory. Park may have worn gloves and used the towel to wipe away other bloodstains on the stairs, attempting to conceal the fact that he had pushed his wife down the stairs. However, despite the police's suspicions, Park firmly maintained that his wife was injured in the bedroom, and the bloodstains in the house were caused by her moving after being injured. He also stated that the estimated blood volume provided by the forensic experts was just a theoretical reference, and therefore, it could not be scientifically concluded whether the amount of blood in the house was unusual. The police also discovered 12 knife marks on the children's room door on the second floor. This door was subsequently removed and kept as important evidence. The knife marks on the children's room door somewhat supported Park's claim that his wife had tried to break into the children's room. However, this did not completely rule out other possibilities, such as Park possibly staging the scene to fit his testimony. Notably, due to the controversial nature of the knife marks on the door, both the prosecution and the defense did not use them as key evidence in later court hearings. With the points of contention and the confrontation between the parties, the case gradually became clearer and could be divided into two parts. The events established through the investigation's findings and the heated debates between the two sides regarding those events. The initial investigation gradually clarified the first part of the story. In the early hours of that morning, after Park returned home, he and his wife had an argument. Park physically forced his wife down onto the mattress in the master bedroom on the first floor. Evidence showed that Park had placed his arm over Kanako's neck, causing her to lose consciousness for a brief period. However, what happened afterward was inconsistent with the testimony. According to Park, Kanako temporarily lost consciousness and left traces on the mattress. During the earlier struggle, she had been injured on her forehead but didn't bleed much. When she regained consciousness, Kanako was extremely panicked, then went upstairs, slashed the children's room door with a knife, and ultimately ended her life at the foot of the stairs. However, the police had an entirely different view. They believed that Kanako had died from suffocation in the master bedroom on the first floor. To cover up his crime, Park moved his wife's body upstairs and then pushed it down the stairs, deliberately creating a scene that looked like an accidental fall. The wound on Kanako's forehead occurred during the fall, leaving a small amount of blood at the foot of the stairs. Afterward, Park cleaned up the bloodstains on the stairs before calling emergency services, attempting to fabricate a story about an accident. However, the police continued their investigation, and the autopsy report confirmed that Kanako died from asphyxiation, forcing Park to change his testimony and fabricate a new story, claiming that his wife had intentionally taken her own life. This sudden tragedy caused a huge shock for their 4 children. They were temporarily placed in an orphanage and weren't able to return home until the end of 2016. The children's grandmother also moved in to live with the family. Meanwhile, Kanako's funeral was held, and Park appeared deeply saddened, crying uncontrollably as he kissed his wife's forehead, vowing to live on bravely with the children. However, just a few days later, during the New Year holiday, the police arrived at their home and arrested Park. The 4 children had to be separated from their father and temporarily cared for by their grandmother. For humanitarian reasons, the police did not handcuff Park, but quietly took him away from the house that had once been filled with laughter. This case was very complex, and both sides had meticulously prepared for a long time. 3 years later, in February 2019, the staircase case attracted attention and was brought to trial at the Tokyo District Court. In the first trial, Park was charged with murder. At the court, there were intense debates. The police argued that Park killed his wife in the bedroom, then pushed her body down the stairs and staged the scene to appear as if she had fallen accidentally. The key evidence they presented was the signs of incontinence on the mattress and the mixture of blood and saliva. The defense refuted each point, pointing out that there were 12 knife marks on the children's room door on the second floor, and the traces on the door could validate Park's testimony. Since Park's children were not of legal age, their testimony was not accepted as evidence. The trial lasted for a month, and in March 2019, the Tokyo District Court found Park guilty of murder and sentenced him to 11 years in prison. Upon hearing the verdict, Park lost control of his emotions, protested, and filed an appeal. A year later, the appeal trial was held at the Tokyo High Court. The defense team introduced new evidence, including 13 additional small bloodstains found in the first-floor bedroom and near the stairs, in an attempt to refute the prosecution's previous claim that Kanako did not move after being injured. The prosecution had also prepared carefully. They presented important evidence that seemed to clarify the possibility that Park had killed his wife. This evidence pointed out that there were no traces of blood on Kanako's hands, face, or clothing that would indicate she had wiped away the wound. Forensic experts stated that if the forehead wound had occurred while Kanako was still conscious, there would have been significant bleeding, which would have been hard to clean up completely. However, the blood at the scene was minimal, and there were no signs of wiping. This contradicted Park's statement about when the wound occurred and Kanako's actions afterward. The prosecution argued that this suggested Kanako might have been unconscious and close to death when the injury occurred. In response to the new evidence presented by the prosecution, the defense argued that Park had used a towel and gloves to wipe Kanako's face after the incident. However, he had not mentioned this in his previous testimony. According to Park's earlier account, if the wound on Kanako's forehead had occurred in the bedroom and she had still been moving afterward, the bleeding would have left more blood on her face, making it difficult to clean. Furthermore, emergency responders did not observe any clear signs of blood on Kanako's face when they arrived at the scene. Therefore, the prosecution argued that these factors were enough to prove that Kanako was nearly dead when she was injured on her forehead. The prosecution also put forth a reasonable hypothesis about the small amount of blood found on the light switch, in the bathroom, and elsewhere. They suggested that this might have been the result of Park accidentally touching it with the towel or gloves covered in Kanako's blood after he wiped the bloodstains on the stairs. After 6 months of trial, the Tokyo High Court upheld the original verdict, and Park was sentenced to 11 years in prison. Upon hearing the result, Park once again became agitated, shouting in court, "This is ridiculous, I didn't do it!" One notable point was that, until the appeal trial was concluded, Kodansha, the company where Park worked, had not actively fired him, only notifying him of a long-term leave. To avoid causing further issues for the company, Park voluntarily resigned. During the trial, a previously overlooked factor emerged: the possibility that Kanako was suffering from severe postpartum depression. At the time of the incident, she may have been in a very dangerous mental state. This perspective immediately sparked controversy and further complicated the case. Subsequent information revealed that Kanako had exhibited signs of postpartum depression after the birth of their third and fourth children. However, she had never shared her struggles with anyone. Park only realized the extent of his wife's condition during the appeal trial. He recalled that in the summer before the incident occurred, Kanako would often call him every week, her voice vague and full of helplessness. She would often say, "I feel like I have so much to do, but I don't know where to start." Her emotions became extremely unstable, sometimes getting angry with the children for no reason, even throwing away their homework. There was one day when Kanako cried all night. Park simply comforted her, but did not understand the depth of the pain his wife was experiencing. Kanako's mental state seemed to deteriorate further, and she began having troubling thoughts, notably some negative ideas. She had once told Park that every time she dropped off or picked up their child from kindergarten, she always felt as though she was being watched. Seeing his wife's condition, Park suggested taking her to a counseling center, but Kanako reacted strongly, loudly denying that she had any illness. In the end, Park relented and likely missed the opportunity to get her proper treatment in time. Additionally, in the year of the incident, Park and his wife discovered that one of their children had a mild birth defect. On the very day of the incident, Kanako took the child to the hospital for an examination. The doctor informed her that the condition might be related to the childbirth process. According to the medical records, Kanako blamed herself, believing she was the reason their child was suffering. Perhaps because of this, Kanako sent Park 15 desperate messages, one of which read, "I keep gasping for air. Every day I feel so exhausted. My whole body has no strength. Tears won't stop." These words reflected the internal conflict and despair she was feeling. Amid the public speculation, Park publicly stated that he did not want his wife's postpartum depression to become the focal point of the case, as he did not want their children to think that their mother's death was their fault. This statement seemed to build an image of him as a devoted, loving husband. However, was the relationship between Park and his wife as harmonious as he described? A friend of Kanako's revealed to investigators that Kanako frequently complained about Park's lack of involvement in raising their children, even alleging domestic abuse. When a reporter asked Park, "Have you ever hit your wife?" Zrania Park vaguely responded, stating that he couldn't reveal it and that the truth would eventually come out. Evidence suggests that on the night of the incident, Kanako had fiercely criticized her mother-in-law over the phone. When this information was revealed, it further fueled public speculation. It's possible that after Park returned home, he confronted his wife about her criticizing his mother over the phone, leading to a heated argument. In the end, during the argument, Park committed an irreversible crime. Despite this, it was surprising that Kanako's father continued to trust in Park's innocence. Park's colleagues and friends also stood by him, believing in his integrity and offering him active support. The bond between Park and his children was very deep, and they missed their father greatly, always hoping for his return. While Park was in custody, his eldest daughter wrote him a letter, sharing details of her recent life and expressing how much she missed him, hoping to receive a photo from him. She also shared her newfound love for manga and how her drawing skills had greatly improved thanks to the works her father had edited. At the end of the letter, she drew innocent cartoon characters, showcasing a deep and touching father-daughter connection. During the long wait for the final verdict, Park gave an interview to the media from his place of detention. Once again, he firmly stated that he did not kill his wife, but also acknowledged his part in her death. He reflected on his actions and realized that he hadn't been involved enough in raising their children, placing too great a burden on his wife, which ultimately led to an irreversible tragedy. When talking about his late wife, Park's voice became gentle and full of nostalgia. In his heart, she was always a beautiful, elegant woman. Whenever he faced difficulties at work, his wife would patiently listen and offer honest advice. The happiest memories of his life were the times when the family would make takoyaki together, creating warm moments full of love. In the interview, Park couldn't hide his sorrow. He often whispered as though talking to his wife who had passed away. They had once dreamed of their life after retirement, planning a trip to mysterious Egypt. Park still couldn't believe that his wife was gone forever. He both blamed her for leaving him alone and blamed himself for not taking better care of her. Though the pain had not yet faded, what worried Park the most was his 4 young children. From their letters, he learned that when they performed a New Year's fortune-telling ritual, the oracle read, "The person who is waiting for you will return." The children innocently believed that this was a sign that their father would soon come back. Every time Park thought of this, he couldn't hold back his tears. At the end of the interview, he expressed deep concern for his children's future and earnestly hoped he could be cleared of charges in the final trial so he could return to them. Park's expression in the interview garnered sympathy and support from many. In May 2021, an unexpected event occurred when Kanako's father filed a petition with the Supreme Court, stating that he trusted Park's character and believed that he was completely innocent of killing his daughter. He added that if Park were convicted, his daughter would never be able to rest in peace. In November 2022, under public scrutiny, the Supreme Court of Japan held a hearing. Normally, when it comes to final rulings, the Supreme Court does not reinvestigate the facts of the case or argue the events between the parties. It only reviews whether there were any procedural errors in the previous rulings. The hearing opened a portion of seating for the public, and from early in the morning, long lines formed outside the courthouse. Although only 39 seats were available for the public, more than 160 people showed up, with a roughly 1 in 4 chance of getting a seat, showing just how much public interest the case had generated. Park's elderly mother and his eldest daughter were also present early, sitting in the public gallery. When the incident occurred, his eldest daughter was just a grade school student, but now she was a third-year middle school student. She still firmly believed in her father's innocence. Before the first trial verdict was announced, she had hoped to assemble a puzzle from the 7 Deadly Sins manga series, which her father had edited, and carefully hung it on the children's room wall, planning to surprise him when he came home. After thorough review, the Supreme Court made a ruling that shocked everyone. The case was sent back to the appellate court for retrial. While the Supreme Court partially agreed with the appellate ruling, that is, based on the absence of any clear signs of wiping on Kanako's hands and face, which could rule out the possibility of suicide, the Supreme Court still found the key evidence to be problematic. During the appellate trial, the judges noticed that the court had not clearly explained the images related to the traces on Kanako's face, nor had it provided both sides with sufficient opportunities to address these marks. After all judges agreed, the Supreme Court decided that the appellate ruling had major doubts about establishing the truth, so they decided to send the case back to the Tokyo High Court for retrial. This decision caused a huge shock in the Japanese legal community, as it held significant meaning. The case was being tried under the jury system, meaning that ordinary citizens are randomly selected to participate alongside professional judges in the trial, helping to determine both the facts and the sentencing. This system is typically only used for particularly serious criminal cases in Japan. The fact that the Supreme Court decided to return the case for retrial, despite having a guilty verdict in both the first and second trials, was an extremely rare decision in Japanese legal history. This ruling gave Park a glimmer of hope, and his family and supporters believed that the truth would eventually be revealed. They saw this as a sign of justice, believing that in the upcoming retrial, Park's innocence would ultimately be proven. In October 2023, the case was reopened at the Tokyo High Court. The trial process lasted for a year, and it wasn't until July 2024 that it concluded. Everyone was eagerly awaiting the final result. However, what disappointed Park's supporters was that in the retrial, neither side presented any new evidence. The debate over the cause of Kanako's death proceeded just as it had in previous trials. The Tokyo High Court ultimately upheld the guilty verdict for Park, sentencing him to 11 years in prison with no changes made from the prior ruling. According to news reports, although the Supreme Court had questioned the evidence of the traces on Kanako's face, the Tokyo High Court still believed that other evidence, such as the traces on the mattress, the fiber analysis from the coat, and so on, were sufficient to prove Park's guilt. Park, who was confident that he would be acquitted in the retrial, had even packed his bags, hoping for his freedom. However, when he heard the result, it felt like a cold shock to him. He momentarily lost control of his emotions, voicing loud protests and curses, which caused chaos in the courtroom. The judge was forced to order him out, and the atmosphere in the courtroom quickly became extremely tense. The reading of the verdict had to be paused for nearly half a minute. Park's 4 children always believed that their father would return to them that day. They were full of hope, eagerly awaiting that moment. However, when they heard the verdict, all their trust and hope crumbled. Unable to hold back their disappointment, the children burst into tears, deeply hurt by the outcome. Although the retrial result was a severe blow to Park and his supporters, the defense lawyer later revealed that they would continue to appeal to the Supreme Court of Japan, holding on to the last thread of hope. Even though this was the 3rd trial for the case, it was still considered an appeal in legal terms, meaning Park still had the right to appeal. However, fate did not smile on him. In March 2025, the Supreme Court of Japan ruled in favor of the guilty verdict from the Tokyo High Court. Finally, the legal battle that had lasted nearly 10 years came to an end. Park was sentenced to 11 years in prison, and since he had already been detained for nearly 8 years, he still had more than 3 years left to serve. Even though the law had given its final ruling, the controversy surrounding the staircase case had not been settled. The deceased could not return, but the remaining family members, whose lives were forever changed by this unexpected tragedy, continued to face life in their own ways. Park's youngest son, who was just 10 months old at the time, had now reached the age to start elementary school. Park's elderly mother was left to shoulder the responsibility of caring for the 4 children, and they still lived in the house that was once filled with laughter. But now, that house was covered in darkness. The children's grandfather also frequently visited. Kanako's memorial now sits in the master bedroom on the first floor, where the family had once shared their life. Every year, on Kanako's birthday and the anniversary of her death, the children save up their pocket money to buy fresh flowers for their mother. In prison, Park often writes letters to his children, inquiring about their lives in detail and sharing interesting stories from his friends. He also patiently teaches them life lessons. Through this special way, he strives to fulfill his responsibilities as a father. That's the end of this video. What do you think? Was Park Jong-hyun really the one who killed his wife? Please leave your thoughts in the comments below. Goodbye, and see you next time.